You are on a date, or perhaps spending a quiet evening with a partner you have been seeing for a few months. Everything has been going well. You feel a genuine connection, the conversation flows, and you find them attractive. Then, in a split second, something shifts. They might laugh a little too loudly at a joke that wasn't that funny. Maybe they trip over a curb while walking, or perhaps you simply notice the way they chew their food. Suddenly, a cold wave washes over you. It is not just annoyance, it is a visceral feeling of repulsion. You want to physically recoil. You look at them and wonder how you ever found them appealing. This phenomenon is often discussed in casual conversation as the ick. It sounds like a frivolous internet trend or a sign that modern daters are simply too picky. You might tell yourself that you are being superficial. You might feel guilty for judging someone so harshly over a pair of socks or a strange pronunciation of a word. But the physical sensation is very real. It is a sudden, involuntary shutdown of attraction. It can leave you feeling confused and isolated, wondering if you are capable of a long-term connection, or if you are destined to find a fatal flaw in everyone you meet. It is important to understand that you are not broken, and you are not necessarily mean-spirited. This sudden repulsion is a complex psychological event. It often has less to do with the specific behavior you witnessed and more to do with your internal regulation system. When we look past the surface triggers, we find that this reaction is often a mechanism for managing distance. To understand why a harmless action can kill attraction, we have to look at how we form attachments and how we protect ourselves when things get too real. At the core of this experience is a process called de-idealization, colliding with a defensive strategy.
When we first meet someone we like, we do not see them as they fully are. We see a projection. We project our hopes, our desires, and our fantasies onto them. We create a mental image of a partner who is strong, mysterious, perfect, and incapable of awkwardness. This is a natural part of the falling in love phase. It helps us bond. However, this idealized image is fragile because it is not human. Humans are messy, clumsy, and occasionally cringeworthy. The moment of the ick is often the moment the reality of the human being cracks through the polished image you created. You see them looking vulnerable, silly, or just plain ordinary. For many people, this transition from fantasy to reality is uncomfortable but manageable. But for those with avoidant tendencies or a deep-seated fear of intimacy, this crack in the image triggers a panic alarm. The brain interprets this vulnerability not as a chance to connect, but as a threat. This is where the concept of deactivation strategies comes into play. In psychology, deactivation is a subconscious attempt to dial down the attachment system. If you feel you are getting too close, or if the prospect of a relationship feels engulfing, your mind needs a way to create space immediately. Disgust is an incredibly effective tool for this. Disgust is an evolutionary emotion designed to make us back away from potential contaminants. By hijacking this emotion, your brain tricks you into pulling away from a partner to save you from the perceived danger of intimacy. The socks or the chewing are just the scapegoats your mind uses to justify the exit. We can see this dynamic play out in several common patterns in adult life. The first pattern is the fixation on sensory details. You might find yourself hyper-focused on a physical habit that never bothered you before. It could be the sound of their breathing, the way they hold a fork, or a specific phrase they use. You obsess over this detail until it becomes unbearable. This fixation serves a purpose. It allows you to intellectualize your desire to leave. Instead of facing the terrifying vulnerability of deep connection, you can tell yourself, I just can't be with someone who eats like that. It provides a logical, albeit superficial, reason to retreat to safety. A second common pattern is the repulsion toward neediness or visible effort. In the early stages of dating, there is often a chase dynamic where uncertainty keeps attraction high. But the moment a partner shows clear interest, availability, or emotional need, the attraction vanishes. You might see them trying hard to impress you, and instead of feeling flattered, you feel embarrassed for them. Seeing them look goofy or overly eager destroys the mystery. This often stems from an internal belief that vulnerability is weak or dangerous. If you do not tolerate vulnerability in yourself, seeing it in a partner can trigger a mirror reaction of shame and disgust. The third pattern is the post-intimacy drop.
This is perhaps the most confusing manifestation. You might have a wonderful, deeply connected weekend. You share secrets, you are physically close, and you feel a surge of love. Then, on Tuesday, you wake up and can barely stand to look at their text messages. You feel suffocated and critical. This is a direct response to the closeness you just experienced. The intimacy breached your internal walls, and your nervous system is now scrambling to rebuild them. The ick arrives right on time to push the person back to a safe distance. It is a backlash against the very connection you crave. Navigating this requires a shift in how we interpret our own reactions. We need practical tools to discern between genuine incompatibility and a fear-based defense mechanism.
The first tool is the reality check. When the wave of repulsion hits, pause and ask yourself a specific question. Is this behavior a violation of my core values, or is it just a human flaw? A violation of values involves things like rudeness to service staff, dishonesty, or a lack of ambition. A human flaw is having a weird laugh or wearing an ugly shirt. If the trigger is trivial, but the emotional reaction is massive, it is a sign that your defense system is active. The second tool is the timing audit. Look at the context of when the feeling emerged. Did this feeling arise immediately after a relationship milestone? Did you just define the relationship, say I love you, or book a trip together? If the repulsion correlates with an increase in commitment or closeness, it is highly likely that you are dealing with deactivation, not a sudden loss of compatibility. Recognizing this pattern takes the power out of the immediate feeling. You can say to yourself, I am not actually disgusted by them. I am terrified of how much I care. A third practical step is the 48-hour rule. When the impulse to flee or the feeling of disgust is strong, commit to doing absolutely nothing about it for 2 days. Do not send the breakup text. Do not cancel the next date. Do not vent to your friends about how annoying the person is. Simply sit with the discomfort. Often the wave of disgust is temporary. It is a flare-up of anxiety. If you let it pass without acting on it, you might find that your warm feelings return once your nervous system regulates and realizes it is safe. It is helpful to debunk a common myth here. Many people believe that true love implies constant, unwavering attraction. We are taught that if it is meant to be, we will never feel repulsed by our partner. The reality is that long-term relationships involve witnessing another person in all their states. Sick, tired, awkward, and unpolished. Even the most compatible couples have moments where they irritate each other. Feeling a flash of the ick does not mean the relationship is doomed. It often just means you are transitioning from a fantasy projection to a real human connection, and that transition is bumpy. Consider the story of someone who almost ended a relationship because their partner was too enthusiastic about a hobby. The partner would get excited and talk with their hands, looking a bit uncool in the process. The immediate reaction was to cringe and pull away. But by pausing and looking inward, the person realized they were judging their partner for being free and uninhibited, traits they had suppressed in themselves. By staying through the discomfort, they learned to appreciate that enthusiasm. The ick transformed into endearment once the fear of judgment was addressed. Ultimately, this phenomenon serves as a signal. It is a flashing light on your psychological dashboard. It tells you that something is happening in your attachment system. Sometimes your intuition is correct, and the repulsion is alerting you to a genuine lack of chemistry. But very often, the ick is just fear wearing a mask of disgust. It is a guard dog barking at the door because it thinks the mailman is an intruder. As you move forward in your relationships, try to observe these moments with curiosity rather than judgment. When you feel that sudden urge to recoil, take a breath. Ask yourself what lies beneath the disgust. Are you protecting yourself from the messiness of being loved? Real intimacy is not about finding a perfect, polished statue of a person who never makes a mistake. It is about finding someone whose flaws you can live with, and whose humanity makes you feel safe enough to reveal your own. The next time you feel that sudden drop in attraction, do not rush to the exit. Stay in the room for a moment longer. Ask yourself, am I seeing something that makes them wrong for me? Or am I finally seeing that they are real? The answer to that question might be the difference between repeating a cycle of loneliness and building something that lasts.